version 2 of my rope climbing method. First video was called Sam Stealth Climb from a few years back. It was a little cheesy and narcissistic, but it's what I came up with the first time I was making a name for it. Since I shot that video, I think that fall I started hunting using this climbing method. I'd used cow halters in the first video just for proof of concept, just to demonstrate that it worked. I did realize after putting it into use that climbing bigger trees than that little poplar I was climbing, you needed to adapt a little bit. I started using 5/8 climbing rope, got off eBay. I don't know what I paid for it because it was a few years ago. This is my tether and the rope I use to climb with. There's a 24-inch commercial prusik I think I got off eBay as well. A little long, so I tied a knot in it. I didn't compromise the stitching in it, but I just tied a knot to shorten it. I probably would go with an 18-inch prusik if I was to buy another one. And then a Screwgate black diamond carabiner, rated for climbing, obviously. 8 km. That's the only piece of metal between my climbing rope and then the footboard rope. I do carry a spare carabiner for when I encounter limbs, and I'm wearing a black diamond climbing harness that 40 or 50 bucks. It was entry level. It's not what I hunt out of as a tree saddle per se. It's my safety harness. I use a fleece saddle that was developed by just some dude on Saddle Hunter, and I took it to the woods and killed a few deer out of it. And I also have a Guido's Web and an original tree saddle, both of which have their pros and cons. However, I choose to hunt out of the fleece saddle now because of weight and comfort. So without further ado, I'll show you what we're doing here. Your tether, you're gonna, first set, you wanna put somewhere around chest height. You don't wanna have your prusik probably 6 inches below the loop. This loop here, just an overhand knot at the end of the rope. It's important to have rope on rope contact here instead of a carabiner, because you need that little bit of friction between the rope on rope to keep it from just going loose and sliding down the tree when you don't want it to. I tried the carabiner here, southeast Ohio, about 5 o'clock in the morning one fall, a rainy day, and I found that when I wanted to open that carabiner, I couldn't get the screw gate open because it was so jammed full of bark, and then the pressure on the tree actually screwed it tighter. And the carabiner kept on wanting to allow the rope to slide, and my tether would fall down the tree when I didn't want it to. So I ditched the carabiner at that point. I know some people have asked why I don't use one there, and that's why. So anyway, your tether, chest height, nipple height, whatever you want to call it, for your first set. This is my foot rope and footboard. All it is another piece of 5/8 climbing rope. The board itself is a 3/4 by 3/4. It might even be 1 by 1 piece of oak runner from a pallet. You can use whatever you want as far as wood goes. It just needs to be strong enough to hold your weight. 13 inches long, so it fits down inside my backpack. This piece of rope here that creates a triangle shape actually goes through the board. That's just a piece of a 1/2-inch hardware store rope. I know it's rated for a weight greater than mine. It's probably over 1,000 pounds, but it's not climbing grade rope. However, my life is trusted with my lineman's belt and this commercial prusik loop, not this. I stand on this, but if this were to fail, I'm still attached by my tether. Anyway, the foot rope functions in the same manner as your tether does. I also have a overhand knot with a loop on the end. It goes around the tree, and then I have some extra rope for adjustment depending on the size of the tree. There's also some more hardware store rope to create a little prusik so I can adjust my footboard up and down. So all I do is I put my loop around the tree. You can hear in the background there's a whole bunch of white oak acorns dropping into my pond. It's September 1st today, so Iowa bow season opens in a month. And Minnesota, which is about 10 minutes north of here, opens 2 weeks from yesterday. So things are looking good as far as hunting oaks and acorns. Although there's too many to be frustrating because the deer just be everywhere. Anyway, so your first set, when you go to climb a tree, the tree's pretty straight. I realize it's kind of a nice tree to demonstrate on. It's not always what you're gonna find when you're out hunting. It does have a slight lean that way. So what I do, if there's any kind of lean in the tree, I make sure that the terminus of my loop is on the arch of the uphill side of the lean, I guess you'd say. That way you're not swinging around on the downhill side of your lean. If there's too much of a lean, you shouldn't be going up the tree anyway. It's very frustrating, and even worse, it's unsafe. Nothing worse than dangling underneath a tree you can't get a hold of. So basically I have 6 to 8 inches between the loop and the prussics on both the tether and the footboard. Initially you're going to put your footboard rope up below your tether, and then tie in your carabiner to your saddle or climbing harness, whatever you're using. So I'm in. All I'm going to do in the first step, and this applies, usually you're not going to encounter a whole lot of small trees. I've been up some skinny trees, and you know, anybody knows that in a skinny tree you're going to get picked out by the deer a little quicker, or a lot quicker. But on these bigger trees, and you can get your arms around it, you can climb it this way. It just, you can't take as big of a bite or as big of a step each time. But basically the method is the same as far as getting your feet up. All I do is I brace myself on the tether with one hand, and then I stick my foot up onto the tree itself, not on the footboard initially, just dead center. Then you can lean back into your harness, put your other hand on the tree, and then you get your other foot up and put it over into the corner of the triangle formed by the footboard and the rope. Now you have your feet on the board, and you have your weight also supported by your tether. At this point you can grab your tether here, or so a lot of times I'll grab it right in the loop against the tree, put the other hand here, and then I'll just push my weight forward onto my feet. The noise you make that you're trying to minimize is going to happen when you do what I just did, where you step up onto the footboard. I probably could round my footboard off. Even actually would probably work well. It'd be like a pitchfork handle, like a round piece of wood, or just you go out and cut a piece of hickory or something. If you have nice straight hickory or maple or whatever, you know, probably your 1 to 1.5 inch diameter, that might not grab the bark as much when you go to stand on it. And then the other way you're making noise is with your actual boot soles against the bark. With practice, you can get pretty quiet. I've killed more than a few deer after climbing this way, and had deer stand up out of their beds after I've climbed up into the tree using this method. So, you know, well within shooting range. So it's as noisy or as quiet as you want it to be. So I've slid my tether up. Now it's time to just move my footboard up. In the first video, I was straddling the tree like this. You can't even get your feet out when you're in a bigger tree. So all I do is I just stay off the tree, take my feet out. I put one knee to the side of the vertical rope above the footboard, so I can just kind of push myself away from it to get out of the way, and you just slide it up the tree. Again, you want to be paying attention to the lean of your tree, if there is one, so that your loop is on the back side of that lean. That way you don't go swinging around the tree. You definitely can work your way around the tree any way you want to, which I can demonstrate here. But again, I just moved up 2.5 feet or so. Again, just repeat the process. I can go pretty quick if I want to, but just like anything, the quicker you go, the more likely you are to make unwanted noise. Here, I'll show how you can just swivel around the tree as you go too. But here, if you can set it all the way over here, it'll be a quarter turn. Probably better off going the other way actually, because as I did that, it loosened up my tension on my tether on the loop. I'm just going to go back the other way. This method of climbing is not going to work in every situation or in every tree. It works really well. Find on public land around here where there's big patches of timber, a lot of times you do have trees that are reasonably straight without a lot of limbs. Private land you hunt around here a lot of times is kind of grown up pasture with some bigger oak trees. A lot of those oak trees are so big I can't even get my arms around them. So either you're climbing limbs or you're using screw-in steps or a ladder stand. You're not getting tree steps on or tree sticks on or anything. A lot of acorns dropping now. Question comes up: what do you do when you encounter limbs? Let's just say that right here I have a limb, right? So you get your tether right up underneath it. So let's say what I would do is slide my tether up to the height of wherever the limb is, so that, say the limb's right here, what I would do is then slide my footboard up just like I just keep on climbing until I get to that point. That's where your spare carabiner comes into play. All I do is I just hook that into my loop on my climbing harness. If you're smart, you hook it in below your other carabiner. It's on your tether. I know I'm making noise. I'm not really worried about it right now because I'm not in a hunting situation, but you can do that more quietly than I just did. But what I do is I hook it in below my loop on my footboard rope, because that's the same grade rope and everything else. I actually, even if my hardware store rope fails, I have a stopper knot at the bottom. So worst comes to worst, I'll hit that 5 feet down, I'm still not going to die. And all the rope I'm using is probably rated for over 1,000 pounds. So anyway, right now somebody will probably tell me what I'm doing is not safe because something's going to fail, but I don't think I have my carabiner loaded incorrectly. But it's right in below the overhand knot loop on my footboard tether. Now there's no tension on my actual tether, so I can just take my carabiner off there. Now my tether is free to do whatever I want. With my limbs right here, take my rope, above the limb we go. And then to get your footboard above it, you just disconnect. Once you get tied back into your actual tether, you would take your lower carabiner off and then disconnect your footboard rope. It's fairly simple to navigate around limbs. It's a little bit time consuming. It does get annoying if you end up having to go around more than 2 or 3. And usually if you're going around 2 or 3, you're suddenly into an area of the tree where either you're too high and you can't shoot, or you should just climb the limbs anyway. I hate not being fully attached to the tree, but if you're climbing using climbing sticks or tree steps or whatever, and you have to disconnect your lineman's belt to get around the limbs, it's no different. So sometimes you're doing that, a lot of times you're not. I mean, like I say, on public land around here in bigger timber, there's enough reasonably straight trees you can go up with this method. Sort of the same parameters as what you go up with a climbing stand. I can get up some trees that are kind of funky. You still wouldn't want to go up with a climbing stand though, and I can go up darn near a sapling that can hold, as long as it's going to hold my weight, you can go up it, which we would not do in climbing stand. So anyway, coming down is just the reverse of what you did going up, obviously. One thing you might want to be aware of or be cognizant of is just how much space you have between your prusik loop, prusik knot, and your overhand loop on where it attaches the tree. You don't want to have too much there, or else you just won't be able to take as big of a bite or step when you're going down. So, big thing is, lower your footboard first. You need to be, you don't want to lower it so much that you can't straighten your legs enough to take tension off your tether, obviously. But you'll learn as you practice. Then when you reset your tether, just don't have it right on top of your foot rope, because you won't be able to get your foot rope loose to be able to lower it for the next step down. Coming down, it's pretty easy, pretty darn quick. I'm taking pretty big steps down the tree. You go quietly, if you want to go slowly, you can do 6 inches at a time if you want. I've actually found that climbing a tree this method, especially like in September, that if I go slow and I take small steps, I stay a lot cooler than if I'm trying to use screw-in steps, or I've actually never used climbing sticks, so I can't speak to them. But if you go slow and easy, especially if you think you're close into bedding, you can do it really quietly and without breaking a sweat, which, in 2 weeks here when I'm hunting Minnesota and it's 80 degrees, I really don't want to get all sweaty going up. Using this method, I found is the only way I can do it without getting sweaty. If I'm trying to screw 3 steps into a tree, it just doesn't take very long to get too sweaty. So this is my primary climbing method at this point. I'm down. Nice thing about this is that it doesn't weigh much. I already have the tether in my pack anyway. You have to have that if you're saddle hunting. So the addition of the footboard and rope really isn't much. Plus, I guess if you're gonna drag deer out and not bone them out, you have all kinds of ropes that are helping drag them out. Nice thing is, a lot of times when I hunt, the only pieces of metal on my entire body are the single carabiner on my tether, and then there's a little metal belt buckle, or a little metal buckle on my climbing harness. That's it. So I don't know what the weight is. I haven't weighed all this, but obviously it's a lot less than 4 or 5 sticks and a climbing stand, or a tree stand. One thing I didn't mention, sometimes I will use this as my platform. Obviously it's not very sturdy. Other times I'll just use a ring I use like 3 screw-in steps. Always looking for something better, just like everybody. So nice thing. And the other nice thing is you can just roll up your foot rope on the footboard just like this. It just slides right down to my pack.